Hello, I am Beck. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be drawing a D&D character based on the roll of the dice.
Let's bring out the Tower of Destiny!
So we have a Warlock elf whose background is Hermit and whose subclass is Great Old One Patron. So I decided to have the patron be Cthulhu, and without doing too much research into Cthulhu, I know tentacles are involved, so I wanted the magic that this Warlock is doing to have kind of a tentacly vibe, but I wanted her to be kind of a badass, kind of like a cool guy. I wanted the elf type to be Drow. We'll get into that later, but from the inspiration board you can see the vibe that I'm going for. So let's get started. Now, a Warlock is a class that is one of the magic using classes, but unlike all the others, this one requires you to make a pact or have a contract with some otherworldly being. It can be a god, like how a cleric's faith gives them magic, and so the god is kind of giving them magic, but it's different in that a warlock will have specific terms in their contract usually that they need to provide something specific back to this otherworldly being. So that makes it really handy in terms of if you're a DM and one of your players is a warlock, having sort of ideas to push your party into certain situations is a lot easier when at least one of the players has something where they need to collect certain things and in order to fulfill their contract, or they have this life's purpose that's drawing them towards this. For example, you could have a warlock that requires you to collect the souls of a specific race or the souls of evildoers, so they need to seek out people who are doing evil in order to kill them and present the soul to their patron. You get it. They have to actually do a thing, which means as the DM, half your job is kind of done for you. One important question though, if you are DMing for a warlock, is to ask them whether they want you, the DM, to play the role of the patron where you surprise them with twists and turns, or if they're going to be responsible for predetermining what their patron wants, and they might show up one week saying my character has been meditating and their patron got in touch with them and told them that they want this specific thing, so I'm going to try and get that thing moving forward, or something like that. It's a lot of fun to have a patron who's specifically sending your warlock things to do. Where was I? Oh, okay, so subclass, we have the Great Old One as their patron, and this is where you have the old gods or ancient figures, ancient fairies and things like that are giving the warlock their power. And in this case, I, as we've seen, chose Cthulhu. It's just one of the ones that I've heard of, and also it lends itself to a character where you can draw something that visually represents the patron because of the tentacles. Yay! You do get a few cool spells and things like that when you have the Great Old One as your patron. I'll just put them on the screen. I'm not going to read them all out because that can be a bit boring. But, yeah. I was also thinking that because their background is Hermit, it could even play in to say that they've been, living in a cave, by the sea or something. Oh, also, the species is elf, but I specifically chose Drow as a sort of subspecies of elf. Which plays into the hermit living in a cave, potentially seeing writings on the wall about Cthulhu and learning about Cthulhu that way. One of the interesting things with warlocks is you can have a warlock who doesn't necessarily know that they've made an agreement with an old god or something like that. In my mind, it kind of plays out where you know, where you sort of, in those movies where they say they make a wish and they just wish to like whoever and they don't think it's going to come true and then it does come true. It's a little bit like that, where you could have your character make an agreement in a dream and then they wake up from the dream and they don't believe that actually happened. Or they read an ancient scripture on a wall and they don't know what the scripture means, but saying it aloud means that they've just agreed to become Cthulhu's minion or something like that. It can be very fun. Obviously, you eventually need them to know what they've done so that they can actually fulfill their purpose or try and find a way out of the contract, which can be very fun and very interesting because it would require changing classes or potentially changing patrons and keeping the same class, but potentially changing the traits that you get, like changing your subclass. Okay, I'm ranting, but you get what I'm talking about. It's a very fun class to be in, and I think I've kind of talked about all of the stats a little bit here, so let's talk more about this specific character, who I am going to call Drucilla. Now, we can see from Drucilla's ability scores that she probably didn't have the best time growing up. She's below average in her strength, dexterity, and intelligence, which to me means she didn't receive a terribly good education and wasn't trained in like combat or anything like that, where you would learn to be strong and dexterous. She was never really taught how to like dismantle traps or be particularly stealthy. I think living in a cave, she probably didn't feel the need to be stealthy. She's got a pretty high constitution, so I'm not really sure what she ate in that cave. If there was maybe a river in there that she could do some fishing or something like that, or if she was just like scraping algae off the walls. I mean, high constitution, she could pretty much eat whatever. And it would explain a little bit of why she's not as strong as she could be, because she didn't get the best diet growing up. She didn't have great nutrition. She is, however, very, very wise and extremely charismatic. And charismatic doesn't necessarily mean social. It can also mean intimidating. It's basically like a nice word for saying how well you manipulate other people to get your way. So I think she is very good at probably reading people. I think maybe she could watch people from the cave. It might even have a village nearby or something like that, where her living in the cave created this lore that it was haunted or something. So all the villagers stayed away from the cave, but she spent a lot of time watching them interact and watching their body language, potentially learning how to read their lips. So she doesn't need to interact with people to be able to know like what their intentions are, and she probably picked up the wisdom of like knowing when someone is lying and knowing how to lie to someone, because that sort of wisdom is recognizing if someone's lying to you, and charisma is being able to lie convincingly. So I think this was a lot of like almost like learning how to be a person by watching TV. It's kind of that thing of like she never really did it herself, but she observed enough to pick it up. And in terms of like her intelligence being -2, I don't think that she would have learnt like to read ancient scripture on a wall. So I think maybe if there was something about Cthulhu in the cave, it might have been something more simple, like if you break a specific rock and there's a gemstone inside and the light of the gemstone shines upon you, then you have made a deal with Cthulhu or something like that, and she was imbued with power as a result of something that was probably a complete accident, but with her wisdom, she kind of recognized it for what it was very quickly, and maybe she had visions of Cthulhu in her dreams. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have a one-on-one conversation. I feel like when you have the Great Old One as your patron, you get a lot more of those annoying interpretive dreams sort of things where this great old one isn't necessarily talking to you specifically. There's just like a vibe going out to everyone that is a warlock of this patron that gives the gist of what they want to be happy, but it's not like you need to get me 15 souls. It's more just a thing of like, I don't like people who fish too much or something like that, or just a vision of like whalers killing this whale, and during the course of the dream you're like living from the perspective of the whale, so the obvious takeaway is that the sailors who are hunting whales are bad, so you need to kill those sailors. I think it's more that kind of vibe, and so you have a clear directive in your mind as to what you want to do, but you're not necessarily aware that this is like your patron giving you instructions. However, when you have killed the sailors, maybe a specific ship that's doing way too much whaling or something like that, once you've killed them, you're imbued with more power, which is essentially you get leveled up. So it's very much you have a goal, you achieve that goal, and you get a very clear and obvious reward. I don't think Drucilla has much in the way of family. Like I said, she doesn't have a good education. She grew up pretty on her own in a cave. I think it might have even been the classic cliche case of a baby being abandoned. It might have been a thing where you hear the story of like in fairy tales they put a baby in a basket in a stream and somehow it ends up with the right family or something like that. In this case it didn't. In this case the stream led to a river which led to like the sea, and then the sea washed into this cave and she just got caught in these rocks, and maybe there were some creatures living in the cave that kind of looked after her enough when she was a baby that when she was old enough to like crawl and scoop algae off the walls that she began to do that. Maybe they were like crabs or something, or even just like very clever squids, and that plays into the Cthulhu-y thing again. But it could be any creature as long as that creature doesn't just eat a baby immediately, because a lot of creatures would. That's just like a mound of flesh. So you'd need a creature that probably also survives off algae, and so they don't eat babies, they eat algae, and that's how she learned to survive in the cave. And they took her in as one of their own little weird ugly ducklings. As far as why she might want to join an adventuring party, I feel like it would be a case of she has a directive, she knows where she wants to go, but if she was trying to hunt a specific crew of sailors, she lives in a cave. She doesn't know anyone's name. She would see their faces in the dream, but that's about it. So she would have to ask around. She might have to join with an adventuring party who has knowledge of how to sail so that she could get on a boat with them and hunt them through the seas. Or she, at the very least, needs someone who can help her fight, because she on her own wouldn't be able to take down a whole ship full of people who are, very good at hunting huge creatures. And also there would be some quid pro quo. So in order to get them to come along with her and hunt this specific group of sailors to stop them from killing the whales or whatever, she might need to go along with them and do whatever their mission is, and they'll have their own priorities. So she would say, okay, well, I'll go along with you and use my special abilities to help you steal this gem or whatever. I don't really care about the outcome of this mission. But after we've done that, you need to come with me and we need to hunt these guys. Or it could be something where in the course of doing a mission with these other guys, you see one of the sailors from the ship in your dream and you get distracted, and it kind of throws everything into chaos, which is, half the fun of D&D, where you have a clear mission, but then there's a distraction that's sort of a side quest, but it's not if you're Drucilla. If you're Drucilla, this is your main objective, this is your main quest, and everything else is the side quest. So it's a question of whether she's formed a strong enough bond with her adventuring party to stay on mission, or if she's just going to dip out, or if she kind of lets them know that, this is really important to her, so could they come and help her now? Anyway, that's all up to the player. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will catch you next time. Bye!